Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the match preview for the Collingwood versus Adelaide game this Saturday, early Arvo game, much like the one we had this time last year where Geordie De Goey had that clutch game, had 20-odd touches, 2 goals, kicked that goal on, I think it was on Keane to win the game in the end. Unfortunately, he won't be present to make his mark on Saturday. However, fortunately, someone who also had a very good game that day, that specific Saturday, is a certain Scott Pendlebury. He himself had 20, he had 30 touches actually. Sorry, I remember doing the pie watch. I did mention he had 30 touches. That was probably one of the only times he had 30 plus touches in 2024. Also had 2 goals in that first quarter, which pretty much set the tone for the Pies moving forward. And then we all remember that moment where Isaac Rankin seemingly took too many steps before bouncing the old pill and got called back for it, and that was sort of the end of it, and Pies got away with the win. And that marked our 10th game unbeaten against the Crows. So we have an incredible record. I mentioned in a Pie Watch, Myercheck's undefeated against them. I think that would mean Nick Dacos is also undefeated. I mean, anyone drafted beyond 2017 effectively has not lost against the Adelaide Crows in their career. And Nick Dacos in particular, he has polled Brownlow votes in pretty much every game they've played against the Crows. So, you know, we're hoping for this Nick Dacos putting on his cape type of game over the last couple of weeks after being held below his standard, if you want to call it. Maybe legacy media and the outside noise would deem it lesser performances from Nick Dacos in recent times, but I think the way we look at it as a loyal fan base who live and breathe what Collingwood do and exude, I think we know that if Nick Dacos has a lesser game, it means it's probably taking attention away from the other players who can thrive in the absence of Nick Dacos absolutely tearing it apart week in, week out. So last week it was Jack Crisp against Fremantle, had his highest rated game in his career. So if you're Fremantle, do you walk out of that game and pat yourself on the shoulder and say, we kept Nick Dacos quiet, but you forgot about the other troopers in the middle who are more than competent in holding their own when asked to do a job? I mean, Jack Crisp has lived outside of the centre bounce for the large part of his career at Collingwood. But when he goes in, like last year, like this year, he just does a job and more. In weeks before that, it's been Steele Sidebottom, and even Ned Long has had games where you maybe question, does he get coaches' votes? And then what do we do with Nick Dacos? We're throwing him forward, and against Freo, he had a goal from a contested. It would have been a contested mark, his first contested mark in his career, but he ended up being dragged down for a free kick against. And then he had 2 more marks inside 50, missed an easy shot on target, and had a shot from about 50 out and it fell short, but the mark was inside 50. So he posed a threat inside 50. Warner couldn't really go with him there. So my point is, there's many ways to skin a cat and there's many roads that lead to Rome, and Nick Dacos is not the only poison that will kill you at the Collingwood Football Club. And then you got Scott Pendlebury bopping his head up again. Just, I don't know, fine wine. What else do you want to say? He's just, wow. I'm lost for words at this point, and all the words I have already used in the past they're getting a bit boring because they don't justify what we're seeing with players like Pendlebury and Sidebottom, Jeremy Howe, Jamie Elliott sort of within that age bracket as well. Nearly, not quite. I'm not, Billy's still got a couple more years before we start talking about retirement village along with the other geriatrics in Sidey and Pendles and whatnot, but you get the point, right? So a lot of people were concerned about the power in Adelaide's forward 50, but I would say Collingwood, to a certain extent, would be making the same argument, especially given how poor Adelaide's backline is relative to Collingwood. So if we look at champion data, our rating in defense, and I don't know what these numbers mean, I just know it's good, right? We're plus 8.2 compared to Adelaide's plus 2.8, right? And then Collingwood's attack is plus 6.4, and then Adelaide's attack is 10.2. So they're quite efficient going inside 50, which I think the champion data rate very highly. I mean, they have 53 inside 50s per game. They're quite accurate in front of goal, so they're shooting over 53%. We're at 46, and they're scoring a goal 28% of the time they go inside 50. And once again, I think champion data rate that very highly, whereas we, as a team, go inside 50. We actually sort of have a similar amount of scoring shots compared to Adelaide. At the end of the day, the fine line is Adelaide are a little bit more efficient. And then, yeah, I mean, Thilthorpe, Walker, Fogarty versus Myercheck if he's in. Hopefully he is. Jamie Elliott, I know obviously McStay's missing. Membry can do a job. Darcy Cameron rolls forward. Although he hasn't been as prominent in the forward half, Darcy Cameron, I think he's spending his petrol tickets a bit more in the defensive half this year, which is what we need. Mason Cox can put his hand up. Obviously we're going to be without Jordan De Goey, and then Lockie Schultz as well. But Bobby Hill is still doing his thing. Bo McCreary had a thing or two to say against Fremantle. So there's many ways we can certainly pose a threat inside 50. We've always done that, and we've done it in different ways. Now, if Adelaide come in fully fit, great. With Taylor Walker, somebody mentioned in the chat, I don't know if there's much backing behind this, but Taylor Walker was supposedly could be laid out. I'm not going to read into that too much, but the point I'm trying to make is if Adelaide have their forward 50 hampered, if they're missing a Walker or a Thilthorpe or a Fogarty, are they as adaptable as the Collingwood Football Club? I would argue not. So for their sake, they'd want to hope that they stay relatively healthy, and yeah, health, what's the best ability is availability. So that takes you a long way, especially in the modern game with how demanding it is when it comes to the conditioning and the fitness and whatnot. So yeah, a bit of a ramble, but at the end of the day, it's just another big game. No real prediction for mine on my end. It's just go in, get the job done. Probably don't concede 60 inside 50s to our 30 like we did against Freo. That sort of reeked of, as I said in Pie Watch, it reeked of 2022, 2023. Let's get back to winning the numbers and winning the contest and going forth from there. Maybe they slap a Ben Keys on Nick Dacos. That's fine. Jack Crisp will hopefully he finds some more time in that midfield after that performance, even if it's 30, 40, 50%, more than what it has been in the past. And that's going to be a challenge because you got Pendlebury coming back in, Jordan De Goey at some point later in the season. Tom Mitchell's going to be putting his hand up after the VFL match this Saturday morning, which we'll be doing a live stream for. So, a lot of permutations to consider when putting together the perfect midfield mix, especially when we're nearing closer to the final series. We just want to get these things right. So that's pretty much all I have. We've covered this quite comprehensively through the live stream, the Pie Watch. We'll have Moving the Magnets tomorrow, and we'll do the watch along on Saturday for the VFL, which will be like our pre-game show, and then we'll do the post-game show for the AFL game shortly after the conclusion of Collingwood versus Adelaide at the MCG. Thanks for sticking around, guys, and go Pies.